The city of Crestwood was known for its picturesque streets, bustling markets, and a skyline that shimmered under the setting sun. But beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic town lay tensions simmering like a pot on low heat. The community had long whispered about racial biases in law enforcement, but few dared to speak out loud. It wasn't until one fateful evening that these whispers turned into an undeniable roar. On this particular night, the air was thick with humidity, and the streets glistened from an earlier rainstorm. A janitorial worker was finishing up his shift at City Hall, a towering building that stood as both a symbol of governance and division within the community. This man, who preferred to keep to himself, had spent years quietly maintaining the spaces others took for granted. His dark skin, worn clothes, and unassuming demeanor often made him invisible to those passing by, except when it didn't. As he wheeled his cleaning cart toward the back exit, a police cruiser pulled into the alleyway behind the building. The officer inside, notorious for his abrasive attitude and questionable decisions, stepped out with an air of authority that bordered on arrogance. He had been patrolling the area after receiving reports of suspicious activity near City Hall. What he saw, a lone figure moving through the shadows with a large bag slung over his shoulder, immediately set off alarm bells in his mind. Without hesitation, the officer approached the janitor, his hand resting conspicuously on the holster of his weapon. "Hold it right there," he barked, his voice cutting through the stillness of the night. "What are you doing here?" The janitor froze, startled by the sudden confrontation. He turned slowly, holding up his hands instinctively. "I work here," he said calmly, gesturing toward the cleaning supplies in his cart. "Just finishing my shift." But the officer wasn't convinced. To him, the bag looked suspiciously like something someone might use to carry stolen goods. His eyes narrowed as he scrutinized the man before him, taking in every detail: the calloused hands, the tired eyes, the sweat-streaked face. In that moment, preconceived notions clouded his judgment, and he decided this individual was guilty before any evidence could be presented. "You're coming with me," the officer declared, grabbing the janitor's arm roughly and pulling him toward the cruiser. Despite protests and attempts to explain, the man found himself handcuffed and shoved into the back seat of the car. As they drove away, the janitor stared out the window, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. Little did either of them know, their lives were about to intersect in ways neither could have anticipated. Back at City Hall, the mayor sat in his office, poring over documents late into the night. Known for his progressive policies and commitment to social justice, he had recently spearheaded initiatives aimed at addressing systemic racism within local institutions. Yet even he couldn't escape the weight of familial ties that bound him to the very issues he sought to dismantle. Unbeknownst to most, the janitor, now sitting in the back of a police cruiser, was none other than his younger brother. When news of the arrest reached the mayor's desk early the next morning, courtesy of a concerned colleague who recognized the janitor's name in the report, shock rippled through him. How could this happen? Why hadn't anyone intervened? Determined to get answers, he immediately contacted the police department, demanding an explanation. Meanwhile, the janitor endured hours of questioning at the station. Officers grilled him relentlessly, their skepticism evident in every word they spoke. Though no concrete evidence supported the allegations against him, the initial accusation carried enough weight to keep him detained. Frustration mounted as he realized how easily prejudice had overshadowed reason. Word of the incident spread quickly throughout Crestwood. Social media erupted with outrage as residents shared snippets of what they knew, piecing together a narrative that painted the officer's actions in an increasingly negative light. Local activists seized the opportunity to highlight long-standing grievances against law enforcement, organizing protests outside the police station. Chants of "Justice Now" echoed through the streets, drawing attention not only from citizens but also from national media outlets. At the heart of the growing storm stood the mayor, torn between his duty to uphold fairness and his personal connection to the situation. Publicly, he maintained a composed demeanor, calling for transparency and accountability. Privately, however, He wrestled with emotions ranging from fury to despair. He knew this case represented more than just one wrongful arrest. It embodied the fractured relationship between the community and those sworn to protect it. As days passed, pressure mounted on all sides. The police chief issued a statement defending the arresting officer while promising an internal investigation. Critics accused the department of deflecting responsibility, arguing that such incidents were symptomatic of deeper systemic problems. Meanwhile, the janitor remained steadfast, refusing to let bitterness consume him despite the injustice he faced. Behind closed doors, the mayor began working tirelessly to ensure his brother's release. Leveraging his influence, he secured legal representation and pushed for expedited hearings. Yet he also understood that resolving this specific case would not be enough. Real change required dismantling the structures that allowed such abuses of power to persist. In the midst of chaos, an unexpected development emerged. During the investigation, newly uncovered security footage from City Hall revealed the true nature of events that night. The video showed the janitor diligently performing his duties, leaving no room for doubt about his innocence. Furthermore, it captured the arresting officer ignoring clear indicators of the man's legitimate presence on the premises. Armed with irrefutable proof, the mayor called a press conference to address the public. Standing before cameras and reporters, he delivered a measured yet impassioned speech. "This is not just about one man or one mistake," he stated firmly. "It is about confronting the biases and assumptions that continue to harm our community. We must do better for everyone." His words resonated deeply, sparking conversations across the nation about race, accountability, and reform. The officer involved faced disciplinary action, though many argued it fell short of true justice. For the janitor, vindication came too late to erase the pain of wrongful imprisonment, but it offered a chance to reclaim his dignity. The aftermath of the incident sent ripples far beyond the confines of Crestwood. National headlines picked up the story, framing it as a microcosm of broader societal struggles. Pundits debated whether this was an isolated case or indicative of pervasive issues within law enforcement. Activists seized the momentum, organizing rallies in cities nationwide to demand meaningful reforms. The phrase "justice starts here" became a rallying cry, emblazoned on banners and chanted by crowds determined to see change. For the janitor, life slowly began to return to normal, or as close to normal as possible after such a harrowing experience. Friends and colleagues rallied around him, offering support and admiration for his resilience. Yet the ordeal left scars that ran deeper than anyone could see. Nightmares plagued his sleep, replaying the humiliation of being handcuffed and hauled away like a criminal. He struggled to reconcile the kindness he'd always shown the world with the hostility he'd encountered that night. Despite these challenges, something shifted within him. The injustice he endured ignited a spark of determination he hadn't felt in years. Rather than retreat into silence, he chose to step forward. With encouragement from the mayor and other advocates, he agreed to share his story publicly. His first appearance was at a town hall meeting organized to discuss police reform. Sitting nervously on stage, he recounted the events of that fateful evening, his voice steady despite the weight of emotion behind each word. "I never thought this would happen to me," he admitted, looking out at the sea of faces before him. "But if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And that's why we need to fight, not just for ourselves, but for our children, for our neighbors, for everyone who deserves to live without fear." His words struck a chord, earning applause and tears from the audience. From that moment on, he became a symbol of hope and resistance, a living testament to the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. The mayor, too, found himself transformed by the ordeal. While his leadership had always been guided by principles of equity and inclusion, this personal crisis forced him to confront the limitations of his position. He realized that enacting policy changes was only part of the solution. Fostering genuine understanding required bridging divides at the grassroots level. Together, the two brothers embarked on a mission to reshape Crestwood's future. They launched a series of community dialogues, inviting residents from all walks of life to come together and share their experiences. These sessions were raw and emotional, filled with stories of discrimination, mistrust, and resilience. Slowly but surely, walls began to crumble as people listened, not just to respond, but to understand. One particularly poignant moment occurred during a panel discussion featuring members of the police force. An officer stood up and apologized publicly for past mistakes, acknowledging the harm caused by systemic biases. His vulnerability opened the door for others to follow suit, creating a space where accountability coexisted with forgiveness. Simultaneously, the mayor worked with lawmakers to implement sweeping reforms within the police department. Training programs focused on cultural competency and de-escalation techniques became mandatory. Independent oversight committees were established to review complaints and ensure accountability. Most importantly, efforts were made to diversify the ranks of law enforcement, reflecting the demographics of the community they served. Months later, Crestwood bore little resemblance to the divided city it once was. Trust, though fragile, began to take root. Crime rates dropped, not because of increased policing, but because residents felt empowered to collaborate with authorities rather than fear them. Schools introduced curricula centered on empathy and civic responsibility, planting seeds of change for future generations. The janitor, now a prominent advocate, traveled extensively, sharing his journey with audiences eager to learn. His message remained consistent. Progress requires courage, compassion, and collective effort. He reminded listeners that while systems may falter, humanity must endure. As for the officer involved in the arrest, he faced consequences that extended beyond formal reprimands. Stripped of his badge, he grappled with guilt and regret. In time, he sought redemption by volunteering at organizations dedicated to restorative justice. Though he would never fully undo the damage he caused, his willingness to confront his flaws inspired others to examine their own biases. The story of Crestwood serves as a reminder that even in moments of darkness, light can emerge if we dare to seek it. The bond between two brothers, tested by tragedy, ultimately became a beacon of hope. Their courage illuminated a path forward, proving that unity is not merely an ideal, but a possibility worth striving for. And so, a city once fractured by fear found strength in solidarity, paving the way for a brighter tomorrow.